Melody Fowler has been a teacher for 30 plus years. She has taught everything from sixth grade through college. She's in her third year serving on the Arlington Independent School District Board of Trustees. She also serves on the executive board of the Arlington Life Shelter, as well as the MPAC board. She's a member of the Rotary Club of Arlington and the Greater Arlington Chamber of Commerce. Melody is here today to talk about tips to prepare a resume. Melody, great to have you with us today.
Thank you, Derek. I appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit of knowledge that I have on resumes and see if it might help someone to get a job.
Well, I believe what you're about to share will, so I would encourage those watching to take good notes. Melody really knows her stuff. So let's dive right into the questions. Melody, let's start at the very beginning. What is a resume and why does someone need one?
A resume is probably the most important thing that you can have when you're looking for a job. The resume is your, I want to say, your passport into whether you get that interview or not. And a resume is the first thing that an employer kind of sees about the person who's applying for the job. If you don't have a good resume, you probably will not get that interview. So that's the reason resumes are so very important. And they don't have to be hard. A lot of people are very fearful of a resume, but there's lots of resources out there where you can look and plug in your information, but you have to have a great resume or you may not even get the interview.
So a resume is sort of like the ticket to the concert. Without that, you can't even get into the door.
Absolutely.
Yes. Now, what should someone include on their resume? Walk people through what they should put on there to really stand out.
Sure. And it's changed throughout the years. So within the 30 years that I've been a teacher, I've seen the format and the information change. But you always want to have your contact information. You want to have your name, your email, and a cell number. Years ago, we used to always include our home address. Nobody mails anything anymore, so you don't need to put your home address on there. So your name, your email, and your cell number is very important to have on your resume so that the future employer can reach out to you when they want you to come in for that interview.
So how long should a resume be? Some people say 1 page, other people say list everything you've ever done in your whole life. What do you recommend employers want right now?
Most people have a very short attention span. So we recommend that you put it on 1 page. The second page, the third page may get lost, but people aren't going to read that. They're just not. So you put your most important information and you make it fit on 1 page. Even if you have to maybe go to a smaller font size to get it all on there, normally we recommend 12, but maybe you need to go to an 11-point font to make sure that you can get all your information on that 1 page.
That's such a good point you make too, Melody, about if people are looking through literally hundreds of resumes, and if yours is too long, it may not make that positive first impression. So I like what you said about keeping it short and sweet to capture their attention span. Do you have any stories you can share of where people that have had too long of a resume, it actually worked against them instead of for them?
Absolutely. And when I was teaching business communication at UTA, we worked on resumes. And so we had our students do the cover letter and the resume and send it out. I saw time and time again, the students who were trying to maybe brag too much on themselves and put everything they'd ever done, those were the ones that got rejected very quickly and they did not get a call back. Something else that I learned about a year ago is many businesses are not using people to look over resumes anymore. It used to be HR and they'd get the resume and they'd read over it and then they would reach out to the person. What they're doing now is they have robots. They have a system that they're feeding the resumes into, and this bot will look for keywords that the company is interested in. If your resume and cover letter hits on those keywords, they're going to call you in for an interview. If your resume is too long, too wordy, doesn't hit on the right words, no one may ever call you back.
That is interesting. I had not heard that before. So you really want to structure the resume so that it gets picked up even by human eyes, but also by electronic eyes as well.
That's exactly right. That's the reason structuring it and putting some key words in there will almost guarantee that the bot will pick up on your resume and that they might contact you for a job.
Let's say the job is for an assistant position. What would be some of the key words that people should include on the resume to make sure that it does capture the eye of a person or, as you said, a bot?
You want to make sure that you use action verbs. You want to look for those verbs that indicate that you would be good at an assistant position. So maybe words like scheduled, greeted, maintained, typed, filed, those words that there probably would be involved in an assistant position. So you want to use those key verbs that indicate you have those skills.
That's so well said, Melody. And one of the things that goes with the resume is what's called a cover letter. Talk about what that is and what should people include in their cover letter.
Sure. Cover letter is equally as important as the resume is. Basically, if you get your resume done, no matter what job you apply for, you can probably use that same resume. But that is not the case with the cover letter. Every job that you apply for, you must have a different cover letter. Your cover letter should reflect the skills that you found in that job application. So if that application was saying we're looking for someone that can have good people skills, we're looking for someone that has good phone skills, we're looking for someone with good computer skills, whatever those skills are that they're looking for, then you want to put those in your cover letter. You never want to mislead. You don't want to put anything in there that you really, is skill that you haven't mastered. But if you have those skills, you want to mention those in that cover letter. So every job that you apply for, you'll have a cover letter that mirrors the requirements for that job.
You know, it's funny you say that because as a small business owner myself, when I see resumes, you can tell the people who took the time to customize their cover letter and even their resume versus the ones that often, surprisingly, would keep the same cover letter. So they might be applying for a role I had, but they put down a role for another job they were applying for. And so it
Yes.
makes you realize these people are not detail oriented and they're simply rushing through the process. And it basically opts them out because you don't even want to interview them because of what you saw.
Well, and if someone doesn't take the time to work through those details and perfect their resume, employers are kind of fearful. If they don't make this perfect, they may not make my work perfect.
Right.
So it's so important that you spend the most time on that resume and that cover letter. Those two pieces of paper could get you in the door or not.
And talk about, Melody, the power of punctuation. Why is that important and why should people pay attention to that?
Well, it's punctuation is detail. And if you're not willing to take the time to check your punctuation and make sure everything's perfect, then you might not take the time in your job to make things perfect and be detail oriented. And no one wants to hire someone that's going to make their company look bad. They want someone who has these skills, willing to take the time to proofread and to make it just perfect so that the employer gets a good first impression of you.
Yeah, that's so powerful, the first impression. So let's say someone watching right now doesn't have any work experience. What would you suggest they put on their resume?
Well, if they don't have a lot of work experience, they could put their education on there. They could put different jobs. Sometimes people forget about little jobs that they've had. They think, if it's not something big, nobody cares. They do care. Sometimes some of the smaller jobs that you've had, such as being a waiter or a waitress or a hostess or someone who worked at a grocery store, you show people skills. Those are skills you can put down. So just because maybe you haven't had what you think is an important job, look back in your past, find everything that you've done and see if there's a way to word that so that it fits with that job requirement or job opportunity. So maybe you haven't had a lot of jobs, but maybe you've had education. Maybe you feel like you're really good with people. Maybe you feel like you've taught yourself a lot on the computer. Those are things that you can include on that resume that make you shine.
So really looking at yourself and asking what relevant experience, even life experience do I have that could apply to an employer is one way to address that as well.
Absolutely. And I remember last year on one of my students was applying for an accounting job. And she said, but I don't have any accounting experience. And I said, well, tell me some of the things that you've done in your past life. And she said, well, I was a waitress a long time at Chili's. And I'm like, perfect. You had to charge things, you had to put things in the computer, you had to put the amount that the food was, the drink was, you had to do all of that. That's dealing with money. You can use that as a skill toward accounting.
That's so good. Now let's shift gears a bit. What are some things that people should avoid putting on their resume?
People are not wanting to see references right now on resumes. So never put, people that they can contact. Just don't do that anymore. So save that information, have it available, because if you get that interview and then they come back and say, we really like you, we would like to check your references, then you can offer your references. But you don't put them on your resume. You wait until that employer asks for them. So we don't put that anymore. One other thing, as I mentioned earlier, you don't need to put your home address anymore. That's just, they're not going to mail you anything. They're either going to send something, text you, or they're going to send it through your email. Also, some people don't realize that, they have these, what I call silly addresses for their email. You don't want anything that says like hotgirl.com, or sexyguy.com. And, right now when you're younger and you're thinking, oh, well, that's cute and it's catchy and people remember it, that is not the kind of email you want a future employer to be sending you information.
Right.
So sometimes it's better to go in and make a more professional email address. That way it's more appealing to future employers.
And Melody, as you say that, it prompts me to realize how powerful social media is right now. Talk about that, because many employers, before they even bring someone in, will check social media. Do you find that to be the case?
Absolutely, they do. Most employers now have a whole team of people, and that's their job. Is to, if they see a resume that they're interested in, they immediately go and start searching through their social media. And I've told my students, you think it's all funny and fun and games when you're 18, 19, 20, but it's not going to be so funny when you're 25 and people are checking your background and you have, a video of when you were drinking too much at a party or something like that. That can totally ruin you from getting that job opportunity. And you can't ever erase those things. People that are good with computers and social media, they know how to go back and find those things, even if you've deleted them, but sometimes they don't go to all that trouble. So you need to go back and look at your own social media and take down all the things that may not make you look like a good candidate for an employer.
Yeah, what I'm hearing you say is you want to give the employer every reason to want to bring you in, not to rule you out before you've even had a chance to make a positive first impression in person.
Exactly. And I've had students who have said, well, that shouldn't make any difference. That's my personal life. That's totally different than my professional life. But they're really not, because they really come together, and things that you do in your personal life are often reflected in your professional and vice versa. A company does not want to hire someone that might embarrass them for future clients or contacts that they have. So they don't want someone that has that in their background. You need to clean it up and be very careful of what you post.
Very, very good advice. So if someone watching has never created a resume before, how do you suggest they get started?
I say go to my friend Google. Google has everything. So get on the internet and you might want to type in resume examples, and they will pull up lots and lots of resumes. And then you can look at the ones that appeal to you, that you think, oh, I like the way that one looks, or, oh, here's one that really emphasizes my skill level, and make yours look like that one. Fit your information into the one that you found on the internet. You don't have to start from scratch. Borrow one that you like and put your information in it. There's nothing wrong with that.
That's so good because many people think they have to create a whole new template, but with technology like it is, there's so many resumes that people like and are acceptable. As you said, just plug in your data and make sure that people can connect with it.
That's exactly right. You don't have to reinvent it. Find one that appeals to you, that maybe mirrors your education or your employment, and make yours look like that one. And then always, 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 always double check, triple check, because you cannot have any spelling errors, any errors in punctuation, anything like that. Make sure that everything looks like it should. I would also think, get some second eyeballs on it. Sometimes when it's our own work, we get used to seeing things, even if there are mistakes and we don't catch it. Ask someone else to look it over. Get a fresh set of eyes. Sometimes they can find those mistakes faster than you can.
You know, one technique I use when I send emails out is I read the email out loud because I can type so fast I leave a word out, and then you realize, oh my goodness, that could cause a bad first impression. So I think what you said there, to have other sets of eyeballs to get a fresh perspective, is so good. Now, let's say that someone hasn't worked in a while, Melody. How should they handle that gap in their employment on their resume?
I wouldn't draw attention to it. I think I would put the dates and the places that I had worked and not try to over explain or get into any of the reasons why you haven't worked. If it comes down to you get the interview, and if the interviewer asks you, well, I see here that you haven't worked in the last 3 or 4 years, then you can offer an explanation. Well, I was home raising my children, or I was helping to take care of an elderly parent, so I was doing that instead. But you don't need to go into that on your resume, because it looks like you're trying to overcompensate, or looks like you're trying to hide something. Just put the dates that you've worked, and then if they're interested and they talk to you and they ask you, then you can offer your explanation.
That's good. That's good. So should someone recreate their resume for every job they apply for, or how should they handle that?
Not necessarily. Again, it kind of depends on what type of job it is and what those skills are that they're looking for. So let's say if maybe you're trying to be, if you have engineering skills, and you want to emphasize those, but really your resume should be the same throughout all of your applications, your education level, your skills, your work that you've done, your experience. Really, a resume can pretty much stay the same. It's that cover letter that you need to change.
Okay. So let's say a person has sent their resume in, but they haven't heard back for a couple weeks. What do you suggest they do to follow up?
I would send an email. I would find out who the hiring person is, and I would send an email stating, your name and the position that you applied for, and you're excited about the opportunity to interview, and you just wanted to make sure that they had received your resume, and you look forward to being in touch. Something very simple, but you want to make sure that you have the person's name and spelled correctly. You want to make sure that you list the job that you applied for, because most companies will have 10, 15, 20 jobs that are open. So you want to make sure you tell them the job that you applied for, and then that you're anxious to talk with them, and you look forward to being able to use your skills at their company. Just something short and simple, but an email after about 2 weeks.
Let me get your opinion on this too, Melody. You mentioned earlier using some action verbs, which I thought was so spot on. Do you find, like in resumes I've looked at, when people say, let's say that they were an executive assistant, I filed, I did this or that. Well, what they were doing is just describing what they did. I find I'm attracted to candidates who have actually achieved things. Like if they can say, I found ways to make the office more efficient, or I increased sales. What do you think about that, where you can put more tangible things where people say, wow, they really made an impact at their company, not just did what they were expected to do?
Exactly. And that's so important, to let that hopefully future employer know the things that you contributed to your other employer, and that you would be willing to contribute to that position. So I think that's very important, to let them know your computer skills and all the different things that you did. But certainly if you helped contribute and that company gained from you, you definitely want to put that on there.
That's good.
But if that's not your case, if you haven't had that opportunity, it's okay. It's okay.
As we wrap it up, any other very creative ways, kind of thinking outside the box, Melody, that you've seen people get their resumes more noticeable? Because right now, people are competing for so many jobs. Are there any things that you've seen that people really use, kind of techniques or strategies to get more eyeballs on their resume?
Absolutely. There's a site, and some people are familiar with it and some aren't, but it's called LinkedIn, LinkedIn. And it's kind of a place where business people go to make contacts with other business people. And if you go and you look, if you set up your account, then you can go in and you can look through all these different people that have their resumes and things on LinkedIn. Sometimes you'll look on there and you'll see people at companies that you didn't know that you're maybe someone that you knew, a friend, and you weren't aware that they worked at that company. You can contact your friend and say, hey, I see that you work for Derek Kinney, and I'm really interested in a position that he has. Sometimes those people that are already there can get your foot in the door. So look through LinkedIn, see who's at which company, see who you might know, and then try to link up with them to maybe get your resume to the hiring person.
Great, great tips. Melody Fowler, thank you for your time. I can see that the experience that you have is not only benefiting your students, but also those watching today. Thank you for being with us. This has been fantastic.
You're so welcome. You're so very welcome.